Good morning, Letty Cabo, and on behalf of the Africa Tourism Association, welcome to our Trailblazer Talk series as part of the Exchange.Africa, which was created in the midst and in response to the exceptional circumstances as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Trailblazer series features in-depth conversations with innovators from the tourism industry and related sectors. We will be taking questions, and the conversation is being recorded per usual and will definitely be made available afterwards. Now let's get into it. Today's Trailblazer is Evita Robinson. Evita Robinson created the NOMADNESS Travel Tribe, an online social community primarily for travelers of color, in 2011. NOMADNESS was the first of its kind targeting Black and Brown millennials and has grown to include over 25,000 members. Evita, always the innovator, created AUDACITY Fest in 2018, and AUDACITY Fest is an immersive experience that celebrates and creates a safe space for discussions around traveling the world as a person of color. NOMADNESS has been featured in the New York Times, Travel and Leisure, Entrepreneur, Essence, just to name a few. Evita's accolades include being named National Geographic's 21 Most Visionary Women throughout travel history, 2018's Afar Travel Vanguard Award, the Route 100, and being noted as an Entrepreneur Magazine's 50 Most Daring Entrepreneurs of 2018. She is also an appointed board member of Condé Nast Traveler's Women Who Travel initiative. Welcome, Evita. So glad you could join us today.
Thank you.
I'm sure I didn't do it justice. So in your words, can you please tell us exactly what is NOMADNESS Travel Tribe, how it came about, and how you operate?
Right. So NOMADNESS Travel Tribe is an international collective of, as you said, 25,000 travelers of color right now. And we even have a space for our allies too. I think one of the coolest and most accurate representations that somebody had said for us is that we're kind of like the travel HBCU. We're like the travel historically Black college or university. Like, look, anybody can apply, but if you are not Black, you know what you're getting yourself into. And so it's one of those. And so we do have space for our allies who come in and just, are advocates in this space as well. And we're appreciative for them also. But we have this international community of expats, of location independent entrepreneurs, of business owners, of people who have 9-to-5s all across the gamut. And we're about 78% female, which I think is indicative in a lot of what you see in what is known as like the greater Black travel movement as far as America is considered. So we really were the genesis of this, started 9 years ago in September. So we're a month out from our 9th birthday, a decade of just building out, starting from 100 people, now growing to 25,000, answering the call really for a home and for a space of inclusion, a safe space for us to be able to vent, to celebrate, to come together with our resources, to, celebrate our influencers, to be able to create our own events. We have about 30 regional ambassadors who are the liaisons of like respective chapters around the world of NOMADNESS members, and then myself and my team. We do everything from international trips, including around Africa that we have done, and I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but all over the world. And about the last 6 years of doing trips, we've been on about 40 to 45 of them, spanning the globe. And, bringing the actual community together through event activations has also been a part of that. We have an annual barbecue, which we say is like our tribe family reunion. Hundreds of our members fly in from all around the world to a respective city every year, and we're able to celebrate with one another. And then in addition, as you said, we started the AUDACITY Fest. And, for me, I'm very big on, if something is useful and nobody else has created it, okay, fine, then I'm going to jump on it and just do it. This is like the entrepreneurial part of my brain. And so, I got tired of being a keynote speaker or a panelist at so many industry-based events, particularly in the United States. And whether I was a keynote, a panelist, an attendee, I was one of only a couple people of color that was sprinkled in the audience. And I was like, me coming in here and speaking to you all about diversity and inclusion, but also showing you the power of the community that I've created, that is just an inkling of what I know and see every day as far as our like buying power, our influence in the travel industry. And so I wanted to create an event that spearheaded and pushed that story and that dialogue through experience. I was like, I want to take this whole situation and flip it on its head. Actually, I want us to be at the forefront and everybody else who comes in as an ally to kind of be the minority when they walk into this space, because we need safe spaces of our own. And so Nomadness is that on the worldwide community level, and then Audacity Fest is that on the event level.
So going back to when you started Nomadness,
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, you're considered, I would say, the pioneer of the Black travel movement. What did you see that no one else saw?
Nothing. I saw nothing. Not a damn thing. I saw, and granted, and I have to be candid with this, I was also going through things in my personal life. I think that's the thing with entrepreneurship too, right? Is like the whole point is to solve a problem. And so you find a problem and the problem may be affecting you personally or somebody in your community, your family, and you seek out to try to like come up with this. So I had been living in Asia for almost a year and a half when I started Tribe. I lived in Japan for a year. I lived in Thailand for a couple months. And I came back after catching dengue fever, actually, while backpacking between Cambodia and Thailand. So I was sick. And it was like the first time in my life, in my early 20s, I was 25, that my family started saying things that I heard other people's families say, like, why don't you get a job? And maybe it's time to settle down. And I was like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about these conversations. And also I'm the Black sheep of my family, right? So I am not following any person's path. I am the most avid traveled, definitely the most traveled in my entire family. And so with that, I needed community. And really that's what it was. It started out with me needing to be in a community of people that look like me, that had the same background as me, that I felt like could identify with this need and this urge that I had to really get out, and the role that travel played overall. And so for me, starting that was really the genesis behind Nomadness. But what I saw clear as day, and we still have this issue now in the States, is just the utter lack of representation. A lot of people don't know this, but before I started Nomadness, I worked in television and video production. My background is like in front of a camera. And so there's always this part. Yeah. I'm like ring lights, all types of stuff. People saw my setup in the back end. I'm like, I have everything I need at home. It's fine.
No, I mean, because you're so dynamic in front of the camera.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's something that I love and something that I'm still pushing forward. I still have a dream of having my travel show, which is something else that, we work on in the back end and, push to come to fruition. But I think for me, because I was coming from a media lens too, I always look at the lay of the land, right? I want to see what's happening in press. What are people in the culture talking about? I'm a travel and culture advocate. But also, what is the entertainment industry? What does that look like? Because I know as much as we don't want it to ring true sometimes, that's what drives culture. And that's what drives the conversation. Who is in front of the camera? Who is on, the microphone? And so for me, I always trusted myself with the platform because I know I have the best of intentions for pushing the culture forward. And so for me, it was always about finding this balance between the media angle and my, and the entrepreneurial angle. And so it was very important. And we still to this day don't have a real travel show that is consistent, that is broadcast. I mean, shouts out to Kelly Edwards. She's the only Black woman I know. She's a dear friend of mine, longtime Nomadness member. Kelly is the only person I know with like Black woman show on Travel Channel. And so there's still a wide open opportunity here, but for some reason, they're also still not taking the risk, as I'm sure that they would say. And because I've been in some of these pitch meetings, I know some of the excuses. And so for me, it's still the lack of representation in the media space in regards to travel. I think even in some of the bigger conferences, some that are even wrapped around us, the Essence festivals and things of that nature, there's never been a travel track, and this is a conversation that I have with my peers that work in these spaces, like, yo, like this is an influence for many of the people that attend these things. You are their trip of the year, and so they save up to travel to this event, and travel is not a part of the conversation. And so for me, it's really about making sure that we're represented accurately and authentically, making sure that I'm building my own table in conjunction with getting a seat at these other established tables already in the travel industry. You know, I know you spoke about the work I do with Condé Nast, Women Who Travel. And so I feel like there's a duality that has to happen in building your own, but also kind of infiltrating the other side to really get stuff done. And none of that was visible. Instagram wasn't even around when I started NOMADNESS Travel Tribe, you know? And so it's all of these things that now have been able to build off a foundation to really get eyes on the movement and the power of it, but also the history behind it, you know, and why it's so important.
So I know you of, you know, building your own table and working within other tables that already exist, or getting a seat at those tables. With this sort of current reckoning we're going through right now around diversity and inclusion, how have you seen a shift personally for Nomadness, for the industry at large, and do you think that shift is of any significance?
Right. I have seen a shift. I would joke before 2020 about, I know how many people are getting their act together based off of how busy I am, you know, and I'm going to say that I started to see a shift in 2017. And it was interesting because much of 2017, especially the beginning, I was doing my TED residency, building up to my TED talk. And so I was working with like just geniuses every day in this residency for a number of months, and, you know, being able to build out the next steps of Nomadness. Ironically, my project that I was working on at TED was about property acquisition, which is another leg of Nomadness that I want to come with, but my focus was on South Africa. And so I was going back and forth from New York to South Africa a lot in those early months. And that's also a place that I just personally have an affinity for, and it will definitely be home for me. And so all of these kind of just like aspects were coming together at that point in time. And I feel like the shift started when, you know, speaking at all of these like governor travel conferences, I was a keynote for Destinations International in Montreal that year. And that really shook a lot of stuff up, you know, to have 1,600 DMOs and boards of tourism literally at your hands, you know, being on that stage as a Black woman. And a lot of them had never heard of Nomadness before, you know, and it was just like, whoa, this woman has come out here, and we're talking about like tens of thousands of people that she already has underneath her, you know, like who is she? And like, where did this happen? And why did we not know about it? You know? And so it was a lot of that started to kind of churn out in conversations that I started to experience during that time. And I think that's when they really started to understand that we weren't a fad. You know, my earlier years knocking on even some of the most progressive companies' doors was kind of just like, you know, and it's like, I don't know if it's that we're too young. I don't know if it's that we're too Black. I don't know if it's that there's something that needs to be proven, or you don't understand the stretch and the power and the extension of the Black dollar in the travel industry. I just don't think y'all get it, you know? And so for me, it was about having to stay the course, you know, but literally having no choice but to become an entrepreneur in this space because nobody was paying attention to us. I had no choice. You know, the industry really made me create this community the way that I have, and then ultimately turn it into a business. And so, you know, thank you for it. But at the same time, it was because there was a complete lack of this. But I do think there's been a change. It's funny, literally this month's issue of Condé Nast Traveler magazine, they gave me, after I went off on Instagram after George Floyd's death and was holding the travel industry to account, because I think all industries need to hear it right now. You know, I got contacted by everybody. And like I said, I have a lot of press connections, which are relationships that have been built over years, the last decade, very strategically. You know, everybody wanted to talk. They wanted to reconcile their feelings, but they wanted to know what to do. And my phone has never blown up the way that it did in that regard. And Condé Nast contacted me and they were like, listen, we want to give you like 2 or 3 pages in the magazine to just talk about this. We want it to be your words. We want you to hold us to account, the industry to account, everybody, you know, and to their credit, they let me do it. And I went off, you know, the last paragraph of what I wrote. And like I said, this issue's out right now. It's their August and September issue. You know, I said, you know, Black lives more than matter. Matter is the prerequisite. Matter is the baseline. Why do we have a problem here, folks? You know? And so it's one of those things. And so I think seeing the Black Lives Matter protests and organization hit internationally, from Paris to Amsterdam to Tokyo, you know, all over the world. I used to live in Japan. I'm just like, damn, you know, like you guys are paying attention. It's a very homogenous country, you know? And so it meant a lot to see not just the Black expats, but also Japanese allies out in the streets during this time. And so I do think that what we've seen in this moment is different. I think COVID became a bit of a great equalizer for everybody. It also made it where you can't just walk away from this. Right. You can't just turn the other cheek. You literally have to stay in the house. You have to look at what's going on. And I think a lot of our allies, because this is their work, if we're being frank, it's their work. A lot of our allies had to take a long, hard look at themselves, at their networks, at their family, at their friend circles, their social circles, and be like, wait a second, am I a part of like the problem here? And let's really look at this. And so I think on a personal and a professional level, I am seeing changes, but I'm challenging the industry. You and I were on this panel last week with Afar where I said it, and I'm making this a point to raise this up on every single speaking engagement that I have here forward. This whole narrative of, yes, but change is going to take time and it's going to be slow. And I'm like, all right, cut it. Like, why? Okay. Why? Why does it have to be slow? Why does it, like, the language already is setting you guys up to be able to pull out of the situation already. Absolutely. Why are we talking about it like this? And there's power in language. And so watch the words that are coming out of everybody's mouth. I said, instead of looking at this like this is going to be a long, withdrawn out change, it's going to take so much time. Why not go into these same exact meetings and have the theme of the day be, okay, what is the biggest impact that we can make the fastest? And look at it from that standpoint. Start there, you know? And so I'm really, really challenging people and institutions and media and the industry right now to start with changing your language, but then implement it in a way where we don't have to have this slow, I mean, it's like the politics game. Right. You're already setting it up for us to get comfortable with nothing being done because it's going to take time. And I'm over it. I'm over it.
Well, and that's what I was trying to ask too, if you thought, you know, this would be authentic, because I feel like not in the way that it's happening now, but in other instances when there's lots of conversation or discussion about change, but then we look 3 months out, 6 months out, and nothing's really been done.
Right.
We keep sort of going back to, it's so difficult, we have to change, there's so many processes, there's red tape, all of those things.
Right.
So, you know, how do we actually actively invoke change right now?
Yeah.
Whether it's small, whether it's large, like what can we do right now, today, this week, to start to move the needle?
One of the first things is really, like I said, the language and approaching it. It's time to brainstorm. I can't tell you what the inner workings of your company operates like. And I also said this too. I also understand I can be a bit more aggressive with this conversation because I do not work in a corporate structure. Right. I own my company. I own my, you know, my business, my community, you know, and soon to be our data. Like, you know, I own all these things. So I understand that I have a sense of privilege that those of you who work at DMOs or boards of tourism, like, you don't have it. Like, you are literally running up against red tape and you have the best of intentions. And I get that. And so I'm kind of like the mouthpiece for the people who have to kind of like watch their mouth when they are amongst their superiors, you know, or even some of their peers in this space. So I get that. And I, you know, I always say that as a precursor. But with that being said, I think it's really about starting off with the internal audit, you know, for real. Like, what do your hiring practices look like? Do you have somebody that's Black on your staff, people of color across the board? You know, what does it look like internally? Are you engaging with bloggers and writers of color? Like, one of the things that came up out of nowhere, had no did not foresee any of this happening. I was again getting frustrated with the fact that there were so many BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, writers, travel bloggers, content creators. We know all of them. We engage a number of them at Audacity Fest. They do a lot of our panels and our workshops, but we just know each other because we're allies of one another and we're advocates for one another. But I was noticing that in a lot of these like major press outlets, Black writers, content creators are just like nowhere to be found. So I am a part of a number of like binders groups for BIPOC community. All of a sudden, everybody, you know, started coming up with these anti-racism, diversity. And I was just like, I got thrown into so many Facebook groups afterwards. And I was just like, my head's spinning. So it was one of those things where I picked two in particular where I knew a lot of, bloggers, writers of color, but prominent people, where they chat and where they hang out online. And I said, you know what, listen, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to create a BIPOC travel writers database. And it's just going to be a Google form. I said, and I'm going to keep it closed, but I'm going to start off by sending it to all the connections that I have. I know the editor-in-chief. I've had a relationship with Julia, the editor-in-chief of Afar magazine for years through TED. So it's like, I'm going to send it to the heads that I know at Afar, anybody I have at Travel and Leisure. Obviously, I have really deep connections at Condé Nast Traveler. Like, I'm sending this to everybody so that there are no more excuses. And so literally within like a couple days, we had about 200 writers that populated this list. And I turned, like, I guard this thing like Fort Knox. I said, listen, if any press wants to reach out to these writers, they have to send an email to me directly asking for access to it, because we opened it up at first. And of course, one person did exactly what I said not to do, copied and pasted everybody's email and then sent it out in a sales pitch. I was like, that's not what this is. You hire these people. Look at, one of the questions is, where have you written for? These are prominent writers who have written for some large name publications. This is not a sales campaign. And I like barked on this person. And so literally they come to me one by one. We have Time Magazine in there. National Geographic is in there now. Meredith, which is kind of like the top of Travel and Leisure. We have so many companies that are in there. And so for anybody that's listening, that is a destination or a, marketing, you need travel writers of color that are about it. I mean, they're amazing. Let me know, because I am literally the gatekeeper to this list. And I let people in one at a time so that if anything crazy happens, we can backtrack as to who's in there. And it's been great. I had a number of, a number of the women actually that are on the list that contacted me and said that they actually got paid gigs based off of it, which is beautiful, beautiful.
That's fantastic. And I think that's important, especially for destinations, because I think whether it's destinations, anyone's point, sometimes there's the excuse that I don't know where they are. I don't know how to get in contact.
Exactly. I was like, let's alleviate that excuse altogether.
You've taken that out of the equation and making it easy to access. So, I think that's critical, is just how do you easily access this information? And something, you touched on before that I wanted to go back to is just from the Black travel movement, how valuable they are as a traveler, and in terms of what they mean to a destination. How valuable is their travel dollar? What is the data around that? How have you decided to build your business around this? Like, what justified that?
Right. Honestly, a lot of it was just from answering the call that I had for myself and observing the community. I like spy on my community. It's just very big. Even when we start to brainstorm destinations that we're thinking about hosting NOMADNESS trips in, a lot of times people don't understand that they talk in patterns. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see a destination that pops up a lot. And maybe NOMADNESS members are going there on their own and they're coming back and speaking about it. And we're like, okay, this place is like, it's sticky to them right now. So let's work on creating an experience. Let's look at who our vendors are in these local places. Let's see if we have tribe members that live there, reach out to them confidentially and talk to them about what their experience is like there and what they think would be great, and really resonate with our community if we come out on a trip. Really starting from the inside first and then branching out is big for us. And so I think that's seeing their movement and how fast and agile and on it they are. That's what really made me realize, even for myself, let alone the industry, that there was a business here. Right. I didn't go into starting NOMADNESS looking for that at all. I wanted community. I didn't know I was going to become an entrepreneur out of it. That was completely by happenstance. I'm like an accidental entrepreneur, and so, just answering the call of the tribe. And so for me, that was one of the biggest indicators, was looking at my community of thousands and being like, no, this is way bigger than me. And I want to see where we're representative around the actual industry versus what I'm seeing and experiencing every day within the community that I hone in. And that was the eye opener for me. To be honest with you, it was internal. It was not the larger travel community, because it's not indicative of us. So it was really what I saw in-house with my own community.
And I feel like over time, or at least over the last few years, I have seen that appreciation grow. So, you know, when you mentioned you saw a shift in 2017,
Yeah.
I've seen a shift. I've seen some interest growing in terms of focus on the diaspora market, specifically from African destinations.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a slow growth, but at
Right.
least I've seen sort of this active interest, and a lot of interest comes from, you know, published reports from the 2018 researcher data around the spending power of the Black traveler. So I'm interested from your perspective, sort of what do those current numbers look like? How do we get to those current numbers? You know, how important do you think data is in terms of really informing the decisions nation make to focus on these new travel groups? Because I would argue that while there's an appreciation for this for Black and brown audiences, there's not a concerted effort or focus on
Right.
attracting the destination.
Well, I was going to say to the first thing that you said, it's a slow progression maybe for the larger travel community, but not in the African American travel market. It was like a boom.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a bomb went off and everybody was like, okay, Africa. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we all got in line with Africa. Now, what's interesting about NOMADNESS is we started going to South Africa for NOMADNESS trips before it became popular. So anybody who knows me personally knows I have a huge affinity for South Africa. I have a huge affinity specifically for like the Maboneng precinct, but we've done 4 NOMADNESS trips to South Africa and we've done 2 to Tanzania. And so with that, this is like our entryway. I was supposed to be in Africa the entire month of April shooting between Egypt and Morocco. And because of COVID, we were grounded. We also have a number of trips for Africa that are on our docket for next year, you know, if everything goes well, which also includes Cape Verde, as well as like a Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia setup.
How do you pick your destinations? Whether
So,
Africa or everywhere else?
I'm sorry?
I said whether Africa or anywhere else. How do you pick
So the way that our destinations are picked, and this kind of goes into what I was going to say before about like your concerted effort really needs to be paying attention to the communities, right? To hell with what the greater travel, you know, community is doing. If you are looking for the African American consumer, it's these communities, it's the social media. This is where they congregate. This is where we all come together. This is where we all come together. So you've got to play into either these influencers, bring them out on press trips so that they can show, because I still think that there's so many stigmas around Africa and it drives me crazy. Never mind the fact that the continent is massive, right? And every place has got its own history, its own swag, its own energy, its own gifts that it gives to us when we go there. I think that it gets everybody in Africa kind of gets like crumpled together. And you guys got to understand, this is an American thing. I'm gonna bring you into some American sensibilities here, right? Because now, no, seriously, I mean, Trump is our president. So like the jig is up. Like, you know, you're seeing some of the Achilles heels and in the ways that America's not getting it right, that we don't have it right. This is the thing, as a Black American, we've known all this stuff. We've known all this stuff because we've endured it. But if you are looking in from the outside, this idealistic American thing, we know as Black Americans how much of that is just so curated on the back end. We do have our freedoms and there are benefits. There were benefits to my blue passport. Right now, I can only go to Egypt and Rwanda and like, you know, and ironically, these are 2 places I want to go to, like super bad. So I'm thinking about it, trust me. And so, but you're seeing, you've got to understand that America is a country of people who don't really travel. They are just getting hip to this game. They really are. I think the last time I checked the stat, it was something like 33% of Americans have a passport. That's how many have a passport. That's not how many even use it, right? So when you're talking about NOMADNESS Travel Tribe and some of these other groups, we are an anomaly to our own nation. And that's just facts, right? Now you throw the demographics aspect of it on there, right? Getting the Black community to come out, a community that isn't marketed to directly for travel, right? They don't care about us. We aren't marketed to directly in our travel efforts. So it's a lot of like the migration from the South to the North. It's a lot of that history when it comes to travel. The Green Book, the Negro Motorist Green Book, traveling during Jim Crow, things that I touch on in my TED Talk. That is really the Black American travel experience, where when we start talking about Africa, this is beyond the thought process of so many of us in our community here. It just is, guys. We're new to this. NOMADNESS is going to be 9 years old, but we were the first in this space for millennial travelers. for Black millennial travelers to get hip to this, which is why our work is so important and why I'm so passionate and adamant about this, because I've traveled, me as somebody who's traveled to about 40 countries at this point in time. Literally, I'm an anomaly to my culture in the United States. So I'm glad that the foundation that Nomadness laid has now branched out, and so many more groups and influencers and community organizers and builders have come together to really push this, because now it's a boom. Also, Black Americans are now also looking at the consideration of repatriation. That's for real, for real. And this is something, like I said, when I was in 2017, when I was working at the TED residency, it wasn't about getting more Black people to travel. I was already doing that from the Black American standpoint. It was about property ownership and how can we come in and invest in these communities and not be like the neo-colonialist gentrifiers of our own people. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are the ethical and sustainable ways for us to come in and actually bridge these cultures and the goals of both, but also be able to live a better life, give back to the mother continent in all of these ways, and also get back to our roots and our culture and understand where a lot of this stuff came from, because this is a history lesson for us too, for real, as a Black American traveler. And so I think that you all are, those on the continent are kind of ahead of the curve than we are in many respects. And it's things like Nomadness and Audacity Fest, where it's like, all right, let's gather the folks, the Black American travelers here, the Black American travel enthusiasts, for those who haven't done it yet, and let's really start to bring that pull, to pull them back. And that's why I say one of your keys is to get in with the likes of myself and other community organizers, because we're the ones that, you know, I don't care about my Instagram follower count. I don't care. Like, I'm not the one, you know, out here taking the pretty pictures and then that's it. Like, I'm actually curating experiences and want to build with the local economy of these places. And when we look at our trips, first thing is, like I said, we kind of spy to see if there's a place. We may internally on our core team already have a few locations that we're interested in, but what we'll do is at least once a year, we poll the tribe. We literally toss up a poll and we'll sprinkle our places that we're thinking in there. And then we'll add maybe 5 or 6 more, and we'll even allow them to add some places. And then we'll shut the poll down. And for about a week or two, we'll just let them vote, right? I'm very big on, I use Nomadness as a focus group. If I'm torn about something, it's like, why am I wrecking my brain about this when I have 25,000 people who are more than willing to give me their opinions on this? Like, utilize the community that you created. That's what they're there for. And so
I'm sorry, have you seen the shift in interest to Africa specifically among the community?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everybody, I purposely kind of did not go to the first year of return because I just wanted, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I was just like, I want to go. I was looking at like second, third iteration, and even going for myself first to kind of understand the lay of the land. Again, I'm all about relationships. So making those relationships on the ground so that I feel comfortable and know who my go-to is, no matter what may happen while my team is out there. So I'm very big in, like, I use myself as the guinea pig first, and then I go out. That's how it was with me also with South Africa, you know, too, and building the relationships that I have. Our relationship with our vendor, Curious on Tanzania, Juso, who's amazing. She's a Nomadness member. So once we look and actually get the location settled, then what we do is we go into, now we have a decade's worth archive of suggestions and resources populated from our community. So we look at who are the transportation companies that they've used, who are the vendors that they've used for different excursions, what are the places that they want to go to that really resonated with them culturally, because we're an immersive travel group. We are not the resort, high-end luxury. There are places for that. And I think it's amazing the work that these people are doing. We are not that. We are about the immersive. We want to get in with the people. How can we get into a township that other folks won't have access to? You know, like, those are the things that we're looking forward, which is why we like really bridging with local, Black owned if available, but local vendors. And so we go into the Nomadness group first and really see who they have used. And then we will reach out to our membership that lives in that location and start to work with them one-on-one to build out an itinerary before we end up releasing it to the group. I think now we have more relationships with boards of tourism, right? We did not. They were not paying attention to us for the first couple of years. So I'm going to be honest with you. I think that mentality stuck with us. And it was like, well, I'm going straight to the people. I'm just going to bypass you because you gave me hell for years or just completely ignored me before. So why now? And I personally have to also kind of break that thought pattern because of the budding relationships that we have now. And because I think people are finally listening to us. We've gotten big enough and we've made enough noise and we have enough buying power for people to sit up straight when we come into a room at this point. And so for me, it's something that I have to remind myself, and, shouts out to Martinique Lewis on my team too, who works as a travel diversity, consultant. She is also very tied into a lot of boards of tourism and DMOs and things of that nature. And so she's also my human reminder, that this is something we need to loop in. I also think Audacity Fest has created a space for us to have deeper relationships with boards of tourism. The first one that we did on May 30th, we had Visit Oakland, Visit Philadelphia, Barbados was on that as well, talking about what COVID practices are. The one that we just executed on August 1st was about investment in the country, repatriation. We had Seychelles, we had Barbados back again, and Visit Dubai were the boards of tourism that we had on that call. We are interested. Let me be very clear on this call. My community is interested in Africa, okay? They are interested in it. They revere it. We know how to act when we get there. We are not, trust me, right. I lay down the law. We know how to act when we get there. We want the immersive experience and the cross-cultural, just pollination of who we are. They are fiending for this. It just has to be done correctly with the proper relationships in place.
And with all your travelers, how do you maintain their interest and sort of maintain the momentum? I'm selfishly thinking about Africa in terms of the momentum that we had coming into 2020 at the beginning of the year after your return, not just for Ghana, but for the continent in general. So during this downtime when no one can travel, how are you seeing your community sort of keep that momentum alive, or their thirst for travel? Are they planning the future? What does that look like?
A lot of them are planning for the future. Some are traveling right now. It is what it is. They are, especially safely, but especially to the few places that are open to American travelers, they are. We do have a population of people that are traveling right now, and it's an interesting conversation in the tribe that is kind of happening daily at this point almost. So that's one thing. I think for us, our engagement is with our events and our content. We were the first, we did a hard pivot, a hard, fast pivot. Literally this upcoming weekend was supposed to be our third Audacity Festival in person. We were expecting over 1,000 people in New York City this weekend for our festival. So for us to do such a hard, fast pivot in May for the first iteration of Audacity Digi was just whoa, but it hit so hard. We had over 500 people show up for the first iteration from over 24 different countries. And so that is how we're keeping people engaged, but executing events in a way that it's still us. That was my one thing that I said to people. I said, listen, if it doesn't sound like us, if it doesn't feel like us, if it doesn't have the same vibe, there is a specific vibe that you have when you walk into an Audacity Fest. It's just, it's amazing. And it's all love and people get it, And so I think that we have to make sure that we're able to do all of that on a digital level, And so for us, it was finding the platforms that we use. You've been in attendance, it's there's face-to-face networking just like this, one another. We have these amazing playlists with music. We have commercials that include Black travel facts that people, it makes it hard for people to go eat and go to the bathroom. So much of the feedback we get for Audacity Digi is listen, I had my eye on 2 or 3 panels. And you guys have literally had me here for 6 hours on a Saturday in front of my computer because this content is this good. And it's this entertaining. Workshops that we have, our allies panel at the last one that we had was really integral. Samantha Brown from Travel Channel, Pandora, some of our partners, because like I said, the allies got to wake up. A lot of this racial work, it's not on us, it's on them, right? And holding them accountable in our spaces, and putting it out there. I think that that's what's really important. But for us, it's been the digital component, the digital engagement, and giving people things that they can do at home that also makes them feel like they are in the physical space. You know, our workbook that goes along with the festival, that was very deliberate because we wanted them to have something that they could print out at home. You know, us still selling our t-shirts and things like that. We really wanted to bring as much of our in-person Audacity Festival experience to the forefront as we possibly could during that time frame.
Excellent. I'm going to jump into some questions because we received a lot in advance and a lot are coming through now.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure you're able to speak to the people. First, when did you know Nomadness was going to be successful? Like, what was the defining moment? I know as an entrepreneur, there's all these ebbs and flows. So what did success look like for you?
I knew it was going to be success. Well, I don't know if success is the word, but I knew that there was a definitive moment. It was about 2 months into it. We were up late one night. It was just like a random Tuesday, Wednesday night. And it was the first time they brought up us doing a trip together. Again, I didn't know this was going to be a business for me. And so they were like, Evita, you have to plan a trip. And I was like, I don't have to do nothing. Like I was like, I'm a solo backpacker. Like that's how I got my start, living abroad, like alone, you know? And so I was like, I don't even know if I like you people. Like, I don't know what's going on. You're talking about traveling together and all of this stuff. And so literally we had Alex, we had a member that was the only person at that time that lived in Panama. And he was really funny, just like a really sarcastic, funny personality in the group. So we were like, look, why don't we just make the first trip out to Alex? We'll bring the tribe to him since he's out in Panama alone. And Bocas del Toro was agreed upon. Within about 30 minutes, we had found a lodging that we were interested in. I had reached out to them and saw that there was enough bedding for about 16 people to be on there. And literally at like midnight, that random night, I was like, okay, this is how much it would cost. This is the place that we're going to stay. These are the dates that we want to do it. If you're interested in it, let me know. I dropped it at midnight thinking I was going to go to sleep and then just like check it in the morning. We were up until 3 a.m. And by 3 a.m., we had the first 16 people. People were screenshotting flights from wherever their home airport was to Bocas del Toro. And it moved so fast that I was like, yo, what is this? So I can't say that it was the mark of success, but it was definitely the mark of curiosity, where I knew that this was something that was bigger than me and faster than me. And that was when I really started to pay attention and was like, okay, something, my spidey sense is going off, like something's here. And I went with that feeling.
Excellent. And given your growth and sort of the boom of the Black travel movement in general, what sets your experiences apart from some of the other group travel companies?
Yeah, the immersiveness and the relationships. It's funny, I was talking to somebody, one of the co-founders actually of Tastemakers Africa. I was talking to Jeremiah the other day, because I know Jeremiah, Sheree, like everybody started in NOMADNESS. Yeah. So, you know, I was talking to Jeremiah and I was like, he's like, I'm gonna give you props where they're due. He was like, you and NOMADNESS have taken us to places before they got hot. And I was like, I know. I was like, we went to Bali before it blew up as this like, you know, digital nomad space. We went to South Africa when nobody was messing with Joburg. And we were staying in Johannesburg. We did Johannesburg and Cape Town for one trip. We did Johannesburg and Durban for another trip. And then we've done like Afropunk trips where it was like specifically we stayed in Johannesburg. That's like our hub. But we were going there before everything was like as beautiful and curated and all of these things, before everybody found out, you know? And so South Africa was another one that popped up in that regard as well. And so we have a tendency to go to places and then they become hot after we go there. And it wasn't set up like that by design, to be honest with you. I just don't like doing the same thing everybody else is doing. Hence what I said about the year of return. I was like, I'm gonna wait, let you guys get this out of your system. And then I want to take a calmer, more dedicated trip with my group after the rush happens. That's kind of how I operate. I like going there either before it gets crazy or after people have gotten it out of their system a little bit. And so for me, that's what's important. So the places we're looking at, Africa included, are more so spots that you don't really hear as much. And we like laying our ground down there. We did the same thing in India. Like we like laying our ground down there and kind of building out those relationships, building them up. And then as we promote it, you know, to our community and on our social channels, then you start to see this uptick that happens. And so I've noticed that with us, we like to be trailblazers and go to the places that people may not be thinking of off of the top of their head right away.
Funny that you mentioned India, actually, because one of the questions that came in was from someone who'd seen pictures of the tribe around
Yeah.
India and wanted to know if you were still organizing those type of trips where many people of color participate.
Yeah, I mean, our trips are pretty much Black, like, because it's indicative of our community. It's funny because I got my earrings from India on today. I love India. It is the place that I have traveled the most in my life, only second to South Africa. And for me, there's so many just things that I love about India, but we are still doing them. We did Holi. We were actually in India when COVID hit. When 45 made his announcement that all the Americans needed to come back stateside, we literally had just gotten through security at the Taj Mahal. And so it was like on the fly, we had to like troubleshoot the situation, but also give our members permission to enjoy the next 3 hours at the Taj Mahal. Like, you flew all the way out to India. It is a 7 world wonder. Like, you literally have no control over this. Let myself and my team handle the situation. As soon as we get on the bus, we will talk about this and get to the troubleshooting. But for the next 3 hours, turn your phone off unless it's for photos. And so many of them just needed to hear that because they freaked out, understandably. But yes, we're still curating that. We still have a love affinity. Holi is one of my favorite experiences and festivals in the world. And I have lifelong relationships with people and our vendors. They're like family for me in India. And so it's always a treat for me personally and professionally to be able to bring a group out to India. We are, but we, we're kind of like all bound to COVID regulations right now. So I don't know when the next one is going to be. I can't say that we're going to be doing Holi for 2021 right now.
Another traveler question from a baby boomer. Can anyone travel with NOMADNESS Travel Tribe?
Absolutely. And let me tell you something.
For that demographic.
Some of the hardest partiers that we have had on these trips, have mercy. I have literally asked for people's IDs. The first person I'm thinking of is Wendy. She's a flight attendant that is one of our NOMADNESS members. She's been on like 5 or 6 trips with us. She was with us in India on this past one. And I remember when she came to Barcelona with us, when we ran with the Bulls, when she was on that trip and she told us how old she was, I said, Wendy, let me see your ID. And I forced her to give me her ID. Listen, age is nothing. It's all about your energy. Like, everybody can come. We have had people in their 60s on NOMADNESS trips, and it was fine. Do what you can, do what you want. We're also not this group that wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning to try to like bombard you with everything. And also, has you doing things. Nobody's going to look at you crazy in NOMADNESS. If there's something on the itinerary that you don't want to do, don't do it. Stay home, keep in contact with us. Let me know. You'll have my WhatsApp number if you need to reach me. If there's anything you need, we'll make sure you're taken care of. But we've totally had people that have literally, matter of fact, Wendy did this in Barcelona. One day she was like, look, y'all go do what you want to do. There's something else that I want to check out today. And it was fine. And we saw her at dinner. So we're also not one of those people. We're not going to hawk you. Like, you paid for this trip. It is your experience. And it's very rare that you find us doing these like super early morning excursions unless we absolutely have to. I'm not a morning person. And also people are on vacation, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the getting up every early. I can't stand that. I can't stand that. When I even go on vacations, it's like everything starts at 7 a.m. I'm like, I don't even get up this early when I'm at home. Like, what are we doing?
No, absolutely. Yeah. One question we actually got through email was why, if you're audience or your constituency isn't necessarily Black or brown, if you're in the industry, why should you care about the Black travel movement?
If your constituency is not, should you care about this movement? Should you care about the Black travel movement? Right. Because you can walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning you are not going to, just because you market and extend your marketing to another demographic does not mean that you are going to lose your base. And I think that's the fear that's at the root of all of this stuff for some reason. And I don't understand what it is, but also because, trust me, sweetheart, your demographic is going to change because the world is changing, right? The entire world is changing. We're becoming a more diverse country. I'm talking about on the, across the world, but definitely in the, like when we're talking about African-American travelers, we are becoming a more diverse country. Different languages, people from all around the world are coming in here. And this is what I say during one of my keynotes, and people laugh at first and then they're like, wait, I said, imagine me being your mom, right? And they're just like, ha, 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 ha. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Imagine me being your mom. I started NOMADNESS when I was 27. I'm now 36, right? Mm-hmm. It took 27 years for a movement to be started in this realm. But now at 36, I'm talking about having a baby. If my demographic is primarily millennials, these are people who have kids. These kids are traveling from birth. Right. So you have a good generation to get your act together, because you're going to be dealing with a more diverse travel pool, period, within the next age generation. And so you've got to be paying attention to this stuff and going ahead of the curve. I think social media has also changed the game. So what has been working is not going to continue to work. Right. If you haven't maneuvered and innovated. And also your pool, whatever you think it is right now, it is going to change. So be a part of that or don't. The other thing is you're good luck, because you're dealing with call out culture right now too. Right. You're dealing with call out culture, you're dealing with cancel culture and all this stuff. So if you think that it is not necessary or it is not important that you are paying attention to what Black culture is doing, you are sadly mistaken, because Black culture runs American culture. Are you kidding me? Like, we run it. We run it.
Absolutely. A question came in. Do you work with individual travel agents and American-based tour operators?
Yeah, so you're going to see more of that. So back in 2013, we did a crowdfunding campaign for it, because again, nobody was giving us any money or paying attention to us. We did a cross-country RV tour. And it was NOMADNESS, and it was HBCU based. For 3 weeks, we drove a 37-foot RV from New York City to LA. And we stopped at 7 different HBCUs in which I gave presentations on travel and diversity and nomadness to these students, because they don't get quality programming a lot of times at HBCUs because they don't get the budget, right? And so we wanted to come through and have these conversations, but we also had meetups in respective cities in the United States where we had tribe demographic. So we hit DC, we hit up Philadelphia, we were in New Orleans during Jazz Fest, we were in Atlanta, we ended up going to UFO Town in Roswell, New Mexico, Grand Canyon, Vegas. We ended up being in Vegas the same weekend as a Mayweather fight, unexpectedly. And then rolling up at the last day of our event, the RV tour was actually Cinco de Mayo, and we ended up getting in LA on that day. And Cinco de Mayo in LA is like lit. So it was just such an amazing experience. And I think now what's starting to happen is we're building such greater relationships with domestic-based DMOs, because one, COVID. So now you're seeing an interest in RVs, in road trips, in, more domestic travel, outdoorsy types of things. And what we want to do is we are planning on re-engineering the RV tour and actually announcing a new RV tour in different regions around the United States. And instead of meetups at HBCUs and college campuses, we want to actually bridge with local DMOs to be able to know what are some like outdoorsy experiences, like what are some survival skills that we can do? Where can we go hiking? Where can we go canoeing? Things where we can still be mindful of social distance, because we don't know how long this is going to be instated, but also has us get back to nature and also explore America while we are here, for the large part. And so our RV tour is definitely something that we are going to be pushing forward. And we're starting to already test it with some brands to see who would be interested in coming on board, but also AUDACITY Fest. AUDACITY Fest, this last one was sponsored by Visit Baltimore, Detroit Metro CBB, things of that nature. That is a real opportunity now. Our next one is on Saturday, October 24th. And it's like, we have digital vendor booths, we sell commercial space. We have a whole deck of opportunities that we can bridge with you all for you to get your marketing in front of our community. That's the importance, because nobody in the industry is throwing an event that has our demographic stats for the Black American traveler, period, in the US, period. So there's so many opportunities with AUDACITY.
Do you also work with agents and operators for travel to Africa?
Or just travel to Africa? Yeah, so Curious on Tanzania, Curiosity Africa is a big one for us for South Africa. And yes, we seek people out. But I think as we build out into the continent and have more trips to the continent, absolutely. That's my preference in a number of ways. But like I said, I don't really like middlemen. I have to be
Yeah, because
honest.
we're getting some questions from some companies that are based on the continent as well. So
Yes, that's exactly who
how
we would
it
want to
works
talk
for
to.
you, and
Exactly who
how
we would
as
want
you're
to
coming
talk
to new
to.
destinations like Rwanda, Angola, some of those other places you haven't been before in terms of wanting to connect with you. And what's the best way for them to reach out to you or to Nomad?
I'll put my email in the chat right now. That way you can do it. I'm also going to put a link in here to our survey that we have going on. So if anybody wants to take that, you can.
And just on the survey, because I know we've talked about it and the importance of data, but what makes your survey different than some of the other surveys that we've seen out here?
Well, there's only one other one that's out there. So I'm like, there's only one.
Obviously.
There's only one. Right. So for us, doing the NOMADNESS diversity and travel consensus, right, was very important. As a keynote and as a speaker, I also like knowing that my stats are correct, and I feel more comfortable having stats that I can speak to that come directly from my community, because our community is not just Black American travelers, it's Black travelers from across the diaspora, right? And so I think coming up with our own data, one, the ownership of it is so important, right? Us being able to backtrack who we got this data from. There's only one other report that's out in the universe that everybody's taking these 53 billion, then 63 billion. Everybody, press, everybody, the industry is taking these numbers and running with them. I have never seen that survey in my life. I don't know where it is. And as somebody who's so high, like visible in the community, for me to never have seen it and taken it, for nobody on my team to ever have seen and taken it, for 25,000 members of NOMADNESS from around the world to never have talked about taking this thing, it just perked up and was just like, okay, so where's the data coming from? Like, who are these people? And are they really indicative of our community, right? And so the only way to alleviate that is to come up with our own data. So for us, we also wanted to have a bigger sample size than what has been ushered out by, the previous research company that has done this. And so for us, we released this about a month ago. Within a week and a half, we had over 1,000 more people than the biggest subset of the biggest sample size of the first company that did this data research. And so we're already ahead of the curve, and we're still only halfway to like where we're looking to get specifically by September 1st. So our promo had to go towards Audacity Fest because Audacity Digi, because that was on August 1st. Now we're back in the heavy promo phase for getting our survey out to be able to hit our markers at the beginning of September. And what we're doing is we're going to be coming out with a data report that is also going to include interviews of our community. So I'm very big on having it not just be, I don't want to just spit numbers at you. I want you to understand that these are really real people with real stories, with real influence and real regard in this community. And so it's actually going to be a story of numbers that comes out in our data report. And we're going to be coming out with it at the end of the year in Q4. We're going to be selling the report to the industry, to a number of industries, because it's something that a lot of industries are finding valuable for their travel and tourism markets. We're going to be having that out, but also like Audacity Digi, and I haven't announced this publicly yet, but I'm actually going to be doing a digital event and talking through some of the stats that we have. So I'm going to end up having we'll let the greater industry know about it when it becomes time. But once we have the report done, we're going to have a release party. It'll be a release event in which I actually sit down and go through the data points and give a presentation on it. And then the opportunity to purchase it will also be done at that time as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. Just someone wrote, can they also email you in terms of being included on the travel writers list?
Yes, absolutely. You would have to use that email. Yeah, use that email for the travel writers list.
With everyone.
I can send you, because it's a quick form. It's a quick form to be added to the list. And then if you are somebody who wants to access the list, are you press or something of that nature, you would have to email me as well. And then I would put you in individually.
I know, fantastic. Last question, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I really would like for you to close on, what's next for NOMADNESS, whether it's through COVID, not just from a DigiFast perspective, but for your company as an entrepreneur, how are you looking towards the future?
Right. We're taking our time. And I think that's one of the biggest things. The moment now is to assess, to reassess, to trim the fat in places that you want it, to think about the things that you love about how your business is going and the things that you don't. and to reassess that on both a professional and a personal level. My business is very personal for me. I break the number one cardinal rule about business not being personal. It is highly personal. I am attached to these people, you know? And so with that being said, it's always them first. I don't want to rush. I've seen people try to make hasty decisions, and we're moving our conference to October, and now all of a sudden we're in August, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, see, that's why I wasn't doing all of that. You know, you guys are making assumptions off of nothing, literally nothing. And so for me, I think it's about looking at the lay of the land, taking our time with the communications that we have going out. I do feel like we will be able to travel again with provisions and restrictions in 2021. I feel that in my gut. We'll see. But we've already pushed all of our trips that we still had for this year back to next year. And we had 4 trips that were already on the docket for 2021 as well already. So I think for us, it's really about taking a breath this year, reassessing, looking at it. We were already in a really cool transition space, honestly. We already had only 4 trips a year. We're not a company whose lifeblood is on trips. I feel bad for the folks that had that because they got hit. This really affected 2, maybe 3 trips for us. Really, that's it. So with us, we were able to have that. Diversifying our income has always been a thing. I'm an artist first and I'm a hustler always. So there have always been multiple streams of income in my company. That's just how we operate. So that has always also been a saving grace as well. So we've been leaning into those other things, whether it's our merchandise line, whether it's our events, whether it's the partnerships that we have, you know, on the other end of this. All of those things play into, you know, what we're doing and how we're surviving, and, you know, we'll thrive on the other side of this while stuff gets itself together. But we're definitely looking at still going out. Travel will still be a part of it. Like I said, looking at the RV tour and the idea of doing some more domestic based, maybe long weekend, shorter types of events and excursions that are of interest to our demographic, and getting back on a plane safely when the time allocates it and the opportunity provides itself to be able to do so. But we're not going anywhere. We're not uprooting anything. We are still in this travel game for the long haul, and we are just going to ride it out. I tell everybody, I said, what this feels like, I said, it feels like being on a really, really turbulent flight. That's what this feels like as a travel entrepreneur right now. It feels like being on a really, really turbulent flight. And it's just highly uncomfortable. Like, you're going to survive. You will land safely, but you just have to sit through all of the discomfort that you're going through right now. And I actually think for those of us in our position, it's actually going to be quite lucrative if you can just hold on, because what we're preparing for is everybody's recovery campaigns. That's what we're preparing for. So we're like, okay, let's establish ourselves in the digital event space for Audacity. Let's keep building out Audacity, because Audacity's the other part to it is it's a great marketing tool. Absolutely. You know, now when we can come together in real life, people are like, oh, tickets, I'm getting them. I'm
ready for it to come.
I'm ready. Yeah. We're scaling it. We had 100 more people at the second one than we did the first one. So it's like, listen, we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. And the 2 pivots for us during COVID were the data and the digital pivot for Audacity Fest. But we're not going anywhere. We're strapping in. And when you all are ready for your recovery campaigns, or if you want to start marketing now, especially if you're a destination that's open to American travelers, I would definitely get in on Audacity Digi, because that is a great marketing tool that you can utilize literally right now. So that's kind of like our forethought, but we're not going anywhere.
Didn't think you would be. Thank you, Evita. Thank you very much. And a special thank you to all the attendees. As I mentioned, we'll definitely be sharing the video and the audio. Please make sure to fill out the diversity and travel consensus. The link's there. We'll be sharing the link, and attend Audacity DigiFest on October 24th.
Yep, Saturday, October 24th is the next one, volume 3.
We'll share those links as well, and we'll be there. So hope to see everyone else there.
Thank you so much for the work you do. I want to say that you all have been doing amazing. And I think that you've taken this time to pivot and to do the digital content and to bring the conversation, particularly around the continent, such an important time. And you guys have been executing it amazingly during this time. So I wanted to give kudos to you all too. It's really important work.
Thank you, Evita. That's much.
You're welcome.
I'll definitely share that with our team. Thank you so much for joining.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.